Chapter 101, Section 101. This is Kangdu. In the real world, the air in the main hall of Silver Frame City turned immediately strange. As soon as one of the kneeling figures on the screen came into focus, the stern Ritter all turned their heads at once, their eyes locking onto the Kangdu who sat in the hall. "What do you mean? Since when am I a traitor?" Kangdu was stunned, then furious, watching the footage of himself bowing as if to be executed. He roared instinctively. What made him even more incredulous was the identity of the man about to carry out the sentence. Hashwalth, standing on the high platform. The atmosphere tightened. In the compilation video, Hashwalth advanced with his Saint Inscription sword, step by step toward Kangdu. Looking at the live scene in the hall, Kangdu's shout and Hashwalth's frown, the assembled pureblood Quincy found themselves disoriented, unable to react. What was this supposed to mean? Had someone deliberately stitched together a provocation? Did someone really intend to show Kangdu being cut down by Hashwalth's blade? Cough, cough. Sensing the mood turning sour, Squad Zero's captain Lil Barrow stepped forward to steady things. He declared forcefully, "Fake! These clips must be fabricated. Kangdu can't be defeated, and Hashwalth would never attack one of our own." He raised his voice on purpose, trying to drown out Kangdu's roar, but the video seemed determined to contradict him. From the screen came Kangdu's own voice, thin with disdain. "Hashwalth, are you overconfident, or have you forgotten what I can do? Saint Inscription I, Kangdu the Iron. With my power, stopping your slash is as easy as turning my hand over. Apart from His Majesty, no one in this world can harm me. If you don't believe me, then swing your sword now." Bound tightly, Kangdu's face in the footage was brazen, even taunting. That boast, replayed in the compilation, made the hall even more strained. Lil Barrow's face flushed. He shot the screen a resentful look. "Oh, future Kangdu, what are you doing?" he thought angrily. "While I'm trying to calm everyone, you're goading Hashwalth and practically daring him to cut you." Not far away on the platform, Hashwalth's expression darkened when he heard the shout in the video. Cold settled into his eyes. Across the hall, Kangdu's live face lit up. He crowed, "See? My future self was right. With my iron body, I can't be cut easily." "Right, Hashwalth." Exactly as in the footage, Kangdu's provocation now echoed in the hall. His words violated the unspoken rule the stern Ritter had long held. Never provoke or fight among comrades. By goading a fellow member publicly, he planted a dangerous seed of division. Hashwalth did not remain silent. To everyone's shock, he answered sharply, "Do you think I can't breach your ability, now or in the future?" His white trench coat billowed without wind. He placed one hand casually on his sword, his stare like a blade reflecting dawnlight, unflinching as it met Kangdu's. On the screen, Hashwalth brought his Saint Inscription sword down. Clang! The first strike produced no blood, only the harsh clash of metal. As Kangdu had boasted, the Saint Inscription did indeed transform every inch of his skin into the hardest steel. His iron body could turn aside a blade. "Huh? See? Whether now or in the future, you can't cut me, Hashwalth." Kangdu sneered, all arrogance. Hashwalth raised his eyelids slightly. "What if I activate my Saint Inscription?" As he spoke, the video cut to a close-up behind Hashwalth. An ethereal, illusory scale of judgment manifested directly behind him. The ability activated. The balance tipped. Misfortune, guided by Hashwalth's will, shifted entirely toward Kangdu. Whoosh! Under everyone's eyes, Hashwalth swung again. This time, luck abandoned Kangdu. One strike, decapitation. A pillar of blood rose meters high as Kangdu's head, disbelief frozen on his face, rolled on the cold floor. His iron body failed. Hashwalth's single sword had done the impossible. The footage ended as the camera was splashed with blood. The compilation's title blinked on the screen. Chapter 87. There's an internal spy. Terminate the blood battle plan. Absolute silence followed. In Silver Frame City, there was nothing but stunned gasps and the echo of Kangdu's severed head tumbling on the cold floor. How is this possible? Kangdu's live complexion turned ashen. It was like someone had forced poison into his veins. He trembled, pointed at the blood-streaked screen with a shaking finger, and bellowed, "How could you break my ability so easily?" "That's because you're naive," Hashwalth's cold voice rang from the high platform. "My power, world harmony, can bestow misfortune upon an opponent with a single slash." Once something is tainted by misfortune, it becomes fragile, unable to withstand even small blows. He walked down the platform with his sword still in hand, the saint inscription pointing unmistakably at Kangdu's head. His tone was icy and official. As the highest-ranked Sternritter, for your provocative behavior and your shouting just now, I have the right to punish you immediately. Haschwalth took on the air of a righteous enforcer, as if he were about to use his sacred blade to purge traitors from the Wandenreich. Kangdu felt the killing intent sweep toward him, and his mind cleared. He stopped shouting. Fear trembled through his voice instead. He roared every syllable, trying to hide behind Yhwach's decree. Haschwalth, don't get carried away. Don't forget, His Majesty strictly forbade any fighting in the inner hall. Have you already forgotten that? Haschwalth's expression didn't soften. His Majesty himself said that during his slumber, I would exercise the Empire's law enforcement power on his behalf. He paused, the weight of his words filling the hall. So, he continued, voice calm and unyielding, in his absence, I have the authority to enforce judgment. A hush fell over the room. Kangdu's bravado collapsed into a desperate, pleading silence. Leelbaro's earlier protests seemed to falter as the implications dawned on everyone. Haschwalth claimed the Emperor's mandate to punish, and he had already shown on the screen that his power could turn fate itself. The hall sat frozen under the threat of that verdict, every eye on Kangdu and the man who now declared himself judge and executioner. Just as it had in the recording, Haschwalth raised his hand, activated his saint inscription, and his star-crossed sword slashed down without mercy. No. Under Kangdu's desperate, terrified gaze, the spirit particle-laced blade rapidly expanded until it filled his vision. In the end, he met the fate shown in the footage. The steel-hardened head was cleaved from his neck, rolling across the cold floor like a bowling ball. Everyone, listen closely. Haschwalth flicked the blood from his sword, his face unreadable as he surveyed them. In a cold voice, he warned, "These are extraordinary times. Anyone who dares to rebel will be executed by His Majesty's authority without mercy." His voice silenced any dissent. Under the guards' watchful eyes, Kangdu's body was quickly removed as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Haschwalth, you've changed completely, haven't you? Basby stood in the crowd, brows knit, disappointment flashing beneath his mohawk. He felt like the childhood companion he thought he knew had become a stranger who had betrayed the reasons they joined the Wandenreich in the first place. The paused recording resumed, and what followed shocked everyone anew. Stop, Basby. No matter how much you fight, it will do His Majesty no good. You cannot defeat me. On the screen, the scene shifted to a blazing battlefield, embers drifting through the air. Haschwalth walked through the flames, his blonde hair whipping in the heat, his star-crossed sword stained with blood. He stared ahead with the same cold indifference as in the Kangdu footage. What? Again? Is it Basby who rebels this time? Pure-blooded Quincy around the viewing area stared at Basby in disbelief. First Kangdu, now Basby. Were they all doomed to betray the Wandenreich? Why did these rebellions always recur in the future? Basby himself went pale. His goal in joining the Wandenreich had been to kill Yhwach, who had destroyed his hometown years ago. He had endured humiliation for centuries, waiting for the surest moment. He had never imagined he would be the one shown rebelling against Haschwalth. When the camera cut, it revealed Basby grievously wounded and covered in blood. The image froze on him as the Sternritter's morale shattered. This is a battle to the death, someone murmured. Could the Wandenreich really split in the future? Confusion rippled through the pure-blooded Quincy. Why did these infights keep happening? Was someone provoking them? Or did Haschwalth or Basby harbor some secret agenda? As everyone remembered the footage was from the future, their certainty wavered. Even the most loyal could become a traitor later. Eyes that had watched Haschwalth with respect now widened with suspicion. Haschwalth felt it. A nameless anger flared in the depths of his blue eyes as he noticed the wary, cautious glances directed at him. He was being suspected as an internal spy. At the 2nd Division barracks, Omaeda scratched his head, perplexed. "Captain, I don't remember any record of sending an undercover agent into the Quincy ranks of the executive militia. Am I misremembering?" Soifon frowned. "What are you implying?" You mean to say you think Yhwach's personal attendant is a spy sent by the Gotei 13? Omaida spread his hands. If he isn't an undercover, why would he keep cutting down his own comrades? The Steel Man before, this fire kid about to be killed, their spiritual pressure was stronger than ordinary captains. They're exceptional fighters. His voice hardened into conviction. Such talented people, and he just kills them. If he's not a spy, who is? Soifan's mouth twitched. She wanted to refute him, but the footage was hard to argue with. 2 swift slashes, and 2 captain-level combatants were dead. In the video that followed, Hashwalth and Bazby engaged in a life-and-death duel, and with one cold stroke, Hashwalth split Bazby in half. The image only deepened the suspicion that Hashwalth was an internal agent. Chapter 88. Holy cow, the transfer student is that strong too? Hueco Mundo, in the Garganta, leading to the human world. The Quincy King's personal attendant is a latent undercover agent? The Gotei 13 are too cunning. Yami's voice cut through the dark, still air, angry and incredulous as he glared at the translucent display that even hovered inside the Garganta. His fists clenched. Hatred for Hashwalth flickered across his features. Damn it, my 6th seat's stolen by a Shinigami spy. Yami, quiet. We're about to arrive in the human world. Focus on the battle ahead. Ulquiorra's cold reprimand came from beside him. Murcielago stood with hands in his pockets. On his pale, moonlit face, the dark green teardrop markings shone faintly in the gloom. Grimjow's face lit up with excitement beside Ulquiorra. Yes, 3 Arrancar were being sent at once. To make absolutely sure Ichigo was returned to Hueco Mundo, not only the Panther King, but Ulquiorra himself had volunteered for the operation. 1 Vasto Lord and 2 Ajukas, this lineup made the Arrancar army certain they could capture Ichigo without fail. According to Sailaporo's intelligence, Urahara Kisuke, who's on the list too, is hiding in Karakura town, Grimjow said cautiously. Having learned he would grow stronger in the future, he'd tempered some of his usual recklessness with a bit of prudence. Foreknowledge was useful, but steady development took time. More importantly now was staying alive. Ulquiorra remained expressionless, but his words carried absolute confidence. If Urahara Kisuke interferes, I will hold him off. You and Yami can go after Kurosaki Ichigo without worry. As one of the 4 Vasto Lord in Hueco Mundo, and the only Espada to have mastered Segunda Etapa, Ulquiorra's strength had always been formidable. Even after seeing Urahara's power in the ranking footage, he still believed he could keep the man at bay one-on-one. That confidence came from his identity. Murcielago, great black-winged demon, crowned, black wings unfurled, born under moonlight, destined to be a dark ruler who watches the earth from nothingness. Just as the Espada were halfway through their journey, the ranking footage continued and the background changed again. Hashwalth's chill voice filled the screen. Ishida Uryu, although you are the next successor of the Wandenreich, personally appointed by His Majesty, for the safety of the Empire, I must personally kill you here. Murderous intent saturated his words, and the feed revealed the next battle scene. What first drew everyone's attention was a face they'd never seen before. Gold-rimmed glasses, deep blue hair parted in the middle, wearing the same Wandenreich uniform as Hashwalth, and holding a holy bow formed from condensed reishi. The unfamiliar face made the Espada watching the Garganta frown in unison. Didn't expect a new face to show up this far into the ranking, Grimjow blurted, incredulous. He'd assumed whoever opposed Hashwalth would be another Sternritter. This was totally unexpected. Ishida Uryu, who is he? He's wearing the Wandenreich uniform, but he feels different from the pure-blood Quinchis we've seen. Yami scratched his cheek and muttered. The bespectacled youth looked like an ordinary human. Without the reishi bow, Yami wouldn't have guessed he was a Quincy at all. Yami's intuition might be right, Ulquiorra said. Perhaps this Ishida Uryu is human. He paused, then added, What puzzles me is that if he is merely human, why is his aura so strong? Using Murcielago's innate, heightened perception, Ulquiorra had already scanned Ishida more than a dozen times in the span of a few seconds. What shocked him was that Ishida didn't put on any display, yet the aura he emitted rivaled Hashwalth's. In Ulquiorra's experience, humans were negligible. How could this slender, bespectacled kid radiate strength not inferior to a Vasto Lord? It was absurd. Damn it, stop overthinking. Yami roared, frustrated and stung by inferiority. If that glasses kid is in Karakura Town, we'll take him back to Las Noches too, imprison him. How could he possibly get stronger in the future while locked in a cell? Back in Silver Frame City, Hashwalth's words and Ishida's appearance set the pure-blooded Quinchis into chaos. What? The next successor of the Wandenreich. Who is this Ishida Uryu? Hashwalth, why are you attacking someone from our own side? Is he a Shinigami infiltrator? Questions swelled until the assembled Sternritter were bewildered. If Hashwalth insisted Ishida must be killed for the Empire's safety, then by his account, he had already executed Kang Du and Baz B, and now this stranger, 3 powerful comrades cut down. Was this not weakening the Wandenreich on purpose? Hashwalth, you need to explain exactly what's going on. Miracle Man Valkyrie demanded first. Even he balked at siding with Hashwalth with so many mysteries in play. Silence answered him. Hashwalth's composure wavered. Inwardly, he wanted to scream. Explain what? Who actually knew who Ishida Uryu was? If anyone wanted answers, they could pry open His Majesty's coffin themselves. The pressure broke him. His cool facade collapsed. He closed his mouth, dark and defeated, offering no explanation. It wasn't only the nobility who reacted. On the campus in Karakura Town, the footage had the same effect. Shh! Sato, Orihime, I'm not mistaken, right? Ichigo froze, staring at Ishida's face on the screen as if he'd seen a ghost. He's the one who transferred into our class the day before yesterday. Sato Yasutora, eyes wide, nodded with difficulty. Hearing confirmation, Ichigo lost control and screamed, frantic and raw. Chapter 104, Section 104. Oh my God! This is too sudden. He was just an inconspicuous transfer student. How can he be this strong? 12th Division, Technology Development Bureau. Captain, confirmed. Akon halted and reported, handing the intelligence he'd gathered to Nemu Kuratsuchi, who had his back to him. Nemu, however, suddenly snapped. Get out! Leave me alone, he barked, shoving Akon's arm so hard the stack of papers scattered across the floor. I don't want to hear anything about the human world right now. His voice was raw with fury. Akon jumped. He was frightened and worried. Nemu's hands, knuckles white with tension, were clenched so tightly that his long nails had cut into his palms. A faint bead of blood glinted on one fingertip. Yet Nemu gave no sign of pain. His gaze was fixed on the screen, on the young face of Ishida Uryu. How is this possible? He snarled. How can someone I utterly dominated and killed have such an outstanding descendant? And Ishida Uryu, this brat, with no talent besides the pride of the Quincy, how could he develop to this extent? Each word was a hiss of incomprehension and envy. Others might not understand Uryu's significance. For Nemu, though, this hit deeper. Years ago, he had kept a secret, ceaseless watch over the boy's growth. It wasn't out of conscience, nor some sentimental guardian complex. It was a perverse scientific curiosity. Nemu wanted to know what would happen to Uryu after the death of his grandfather, Ishida Soken. Would the young Quincy turn his grief into strength, or would he crumble into despair? The answer, seen now on the screen, required no further commentary. Uryu's aura, his steadiness against Hashwalth, every frame was an affront to Nemu. He was furious, jealous beyond reason. Akon, he snapped, slamming his fist down on the lab table. The strike made the instruments tremble. His voice was hoarse and sharp as he barked the order through clenched teeth. Go! Don't waste any time. Tell Kuchiki Byakuya and Toshiro Hitsugaya that Ishida Uryu is in Karakura Town. Bring him back to Soul Society at all costs. The command almost became a roar. It was clear Nemu was no longer the composed scientific genius who would later stand before the Spirit King's left hand. In that moment, he had become something warped by jealousy. Yes, Akon replied, startled, and fled the monitoring room so fast he left the documents scattered behind him. On the screen, the broadcast continued. In life, at any moment, anywhere, we stand upon a scale, a narrator intoned. The scale judges all, right and wrong, balanced and unbalanced. The camera cut to the duel. Only minutes before, the two had been standing face to face. Now Ishida Uryu lay in a pool of blood while Hashwalth towered above him, his spiritual sword suspended over Uryu's head. One careless swing, and Uryu's skull would be shattered. So, I die the moment I appear? Uryu thought, stunned, his voice hollow in the playback. He had expected his moment to shine. Instead, he had become a mere footnote. Yet even in that helpless posture, he spoke. Hashwalth, Uryu rasped, forcing himself to sit up, bracing with shaking arms in his own blood. As Yhwach's personal guard, before you kill me, don't you want to know what Saint Inscription power he once gave me? Hashwalth's face was glacial. I'm not interested in the power of a dying man, he replied. If your Saint Inscription had been of any use, you would have employed it long ago. No, Uryu insisted. Before, the time had not yet come. Now, the time is right. A small, determined smile twisted the corner of his mouth. The image of that smile rippled across Silver Frame City, through the halls where the pure-blood Quincy watched. Murmurs spread like wildfire. What's happening? One whispered. He actually looks confident, like he can turn things around, another said. Did he deliberately wait until he was badly wounded? Self-mutilation, calculated suffering. Could that possibly reverse the outcome? The pure-blood Quincy frowned in confusion and curiosity. They did not know this companion, this Ishida Uryu. What kind of saint inscription could allow him to beat Hashwalth? Was it an A-ranked inscription, the same caliber as Yhwach's? Speculation swelled. Then, without warning, rip! The sudden noise of fabric tearing and a gush of blood cut through the murmur. Every eye on the broadcast widened. A scene unfolded that left everyone in disbelief. Ah! Hashwalth, who had been poised to deliver the final blow, staggered instead. He clutched at his chest as blood stained his hand, and an expression of stunned pain crossed his features. The sword he had held aloft slipped, forgotten, as he stepped back, unsteady. On the screen, Uryu's Quincy uniform hung torn, and the wound at his own side, glistening, dark, seemed to be the source of something that had erupted between them. A faint, strange light pulsed from the ragged tear, and the air itself seemed to shudder. Everyone watching fell silent. The man who should have finished the fight was suddenly wounded, reeling, and the balance of the duel had, impossibly, begun to tip. Chapter 105. Section 105. Suddenly, Hashwalth staggered. Large gashes opened across his body, and blood spurted out, instantly staining his pristine white trenchcoat red. The pure-blooded Quincies around him gaped in disbelief. What's going on? What did that Ishida Uryu do? He didn't even move, so why is Hashwalth suddenly wounded like that? Look, all the wounds on Ishida Uryu are gone. They watched in horror as Ishida stood completely unharmed. Every injury he had just taken seemed to have vanished, transferred instead to Hashwalth. Hashwalth's Quincy uniform bore the same sword marks, identical in size and placement to the cuts he had just inflicted on Ishida. How did you do that? Hashwalth croaked, coughing up blood. Severely wounded, his eyelids drooped. His voice was weak, as if he might collapse at any moment. Ishida's mouth curved into a cold, mocking smile. Like Yhwach, I am the only saint inscription ranked A among all the pure-blooded Quincies. The Quincies throughout Silver Frame City all stared, stunned and whispering the same thing. How is that possible? How could he possess the same saint inscription as His Majesty? Ishida raised his chin and declared, blunt and proud, Saint Inscription A, the antithesis. When I activate it, I can completely reverse events that have already occurred between 2 points. In other words, he continued, the damage I just sustained was transferred entirely to you by the power of the antithesis. He raised his hand, fitted a hallowed arrow to the string, and sighted on Hashwalth. Hashwalth, this is the end. With a snap, the bowstring released. The arrow flew true and struck Hashwalth with pinpoint precision. The force of the spiritual arrow sent him hurtling backward, crashing into the ruined walls. For the watching world, the clash between these two purebloods seemed to end in Ishida's favor. From the rooftop of the high school campus, Ichigo's voice rang out, full of envy. So cool. That transfer student is insane. That Hashwalth guy just cut my Zanpakuto in one strike, then Ishida reversed it and counterattacked. Ichigo's Chunibyu-style idealism ignited at the sight. The arrogant, aloof expression he'd resented the day they'd brushed past in the faculty office now looked like the cool demeanor of a true powerhouse. Inside the Ishida family mansion, the image of his future self, calm, heroic, bow-drawn, sent shivers of pride through him. So strong, he thought. Saint Inscription A, the same as the Quincy King. My future self has surpassed even grandfather and dad. But before any celebration could last, the fight took another turn. From within the near-collapsed ruins came Hashwalth's cold, composed voice. Undeniably, your saint inscription is unexpected. No wonder you had the confidence to face me alone, he said, his tone almost praising. Then, with a hint of arrogance, however, don't think you're the only one who can reverse damage. He raised his shield of the Almighty. Then something shocking happened. There was a loud rebounding sound. Ishida's face froze, first with surprise, then terror, and pain contorted his features. With a cry, time seemed to snap back. Ishida collapsed into a pool of blood once more, as if the damage had been reflected right back at him. Across the Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and the Wandenreich, people reacted in a flurry. Nani? How did the damage bounce back? Is the video replaying? Are these two just playing bumper-bumper? Some joked that they should stop bouncing and finish the fight. Among the Gotei 13, most watched with grim amusement. They were shocked that Hashwalth could reflect damage, but secretly pleased to see two powerful pure-blooded Quinchis wasting themselves on each other. If both fell, it would suit them fine. In the 11th Division, Ikaku Madarame exclaimed, while Zaraki Kenpachi frowned. For these two who lived by direct, brutal combat, the idea of rule-based abilities that reversed events was infuriating. Such tricks undermined their philosophy of simply hacking away until one side fell. Yumichika Ayasagawa, watching intently, noticed something crucial. Look closely. There are cracks forming on the surface of that silver shield in Hashwalth's hand. I think that's the real reason the reflected damage happens. Also, he added, lightly biting his fingertip, this blonde Quincy's aura keeps rising. It's getting darker behind him. Little Yachiru's wide, watery eyes reflected Hashwalth's back, and the dim, mysterious black curtain behind him, like an abyss. Darkness, annihilation, oppressive power. It radiated an evil aura that words could scarcely describe. Even through the transparent light screen, one look made Yachiru feel as if she were suffocating. That sensation, it was as if the darkness were prying into every secret she had. In front of Hashwalth now, nothing seemed able to hide. What kind of ability is this? Zaraki Kenpachi's brows drew together. Brutal as he was, often called a beast, he actually felt a flicker of panic facing that black curtain. Such an abnormal phenomenon had never appeared before. Hashwalth's aura shimmered strangely. With each step he took, the surging darkness behind him rose suddenly by 10 feet, rolling like ocean waves. Negative emotions bred within it, making hearts pound uncontrollably. Then Hashwalth spoke. Do you see? This is the result of me exchanging power with His Majesty during the night. And this is the power of omniscience and omnipotence. The whole Shinigami world fell deathly silent. Omniscience and omnipotence? So Yhwach's power has finally been revealed? In the 5th Division's underground chamber, Aizen's eyes widened in a way they rarely had. Watching the darkness gradually cover half of Hashwalth's body and swallow the camera behind his golden hair, light flared in Aizen's gaze. He burned with desire. This was the power he had long craved, the kind of power he had been blocked from by dimensional limits for years. Lord Aizen, Tosen Kaname said behind him, his voice trembling. Even blind, he seemed affected. The darkness on the screen penetrated the veil over his eyes and struck at his soul. The evil aura coming from Hashwalth makes me feel so lonely and afraid. Omniscience and omnipotence, knowing everything, foreseeing the future, controlling all, an incomparable power. It moved the trio in the room. Omniscience and omnipotence. No wonder he made the list and ranked 6th. Ichimaru Jin stared blankly at the screen filled with darkness, a great wave churning in his chest. Merely looking at it caused an oppressive force that almost stopped the flow of blood and spiritual pressure in his body. It was terrifying to imagine what it would be like when the real Yhwach used that power. Aizen snapped him back to focus. Gin, what are you still gawking at? Quickly, take notes, record every frame. This will be a crucial clue for defeating Yhwach. The inventory video's image went completely black as the expanding darkness obscured the camera. When the entire background became pitch, Ishida, Uryu, and Hashwalth, present in that view, simply vanished into the void. Their fates were unknown. The final outcome of the skirmish became an unsolved mystery. That marked the end of this round of the inventory. But because the battle had been cut short and the dialogue shown within it revealed too much, and because of Hashwalth's actions during this inventory, the accusations of treason against him hardened. The pure-blooded Quincy erupted in outrage. Hashwalth, Don't tell me you're not a traitor! You bastard! You revealed His Majesty's ability. Get down from there. You're not fit to stand above us. Traitor, get out of Silver Frame City. Get out of the Wandenreich. The Sternritter were a calculating lot. None were innocent. Once their patience snapped and so much damning evidence lay before them, fury flared. Ignoring imperial protocol and the gravity of insubordination, they openly denounced Haschwalth, who held the highest rank among them. Haschwalth's face was as gloomy as still water. Beneath his sapphire eyes flickered a mixture of rage and helplessness. His hand was already resting on the hilt of his sword under his spotless white trench coat as he shot back, barely containing himself. Before His Majesty fully awakens, are you planning to openly rebel? Outnumbered, Haschwalth could only invoke Yhwach as a shield. His own ability had been exposed, and the Saint Inscription's power was not infinite. It could not be used on everyone at once. If more than 5 Sternritter attacked simultaneously, even confident as he was, he could not be sure he could both fight them off and guard against sneak attacks from others. Clearly, the inventory video brought him no advantage. On the contrary, the suspicions of treachery sank his standing overnight. He faced an unprecedented crisis. The atmosphere turned electric. The once unified Silver Frame City teetered on the verge of fracture. Except for a few who stayed neutral, most pure-blooded Quincy joined the accusers. Even the loyalists in Squad Zero found themselves wavering. The scene changed. Karakura Town, suburbs. Urahara Kisuke exited a general store at a leisurely pace, a folding fan in one hand and a bag of snacks tucked under his arm. He tilted his head up at the clear sky and murmured to himself, "Oh my, already afternoon, dusk will be upon us soon. Right, Yorichi-san." At that instant, a swift, graceful figure streaked through the empty space to his left like a bolt of lightning, snatching the snack bag from the shopkeeper's hip. Playful laughter accompanied the motion. "Kisuke, you really do understand me," sensing my presence from so far away. Under her purple-brown ponytail, an orange skin-tight suit clung to her athletic curves, every line of her body defined, an alluring, mature beauty at the height of her power. Yorichi's amber eyes flashed with that feline quickness everyone recognized, the Flash Goddess herself. She'd been on the inventory list before, the woman who'd once had every male Shinigami begging the author to remove the mosaic censorship. After wandering for a while, she'd taken advantage of the lull between inventory rounds and decided to return to the general store to consult with Urahara Kisuke about countermeasures. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Urahara took off his fisherman's hat, smoothed his slightly mussed hair, and chuckled. "Pity you're a step late. You could have met Isshin." "Oh." Yorichi raised an eyebrow, interested. "Shiba, no. Kurosaki Isshin was here?" "Yeah. Right at the start of the inventory, Isshin thought it might be one of my pranks and came over early." Urahara spread his hands helplessly. In those first rounds, he'd been the scapegoat for everything. "Where is he now?" Yorichi asked. "Karakura First High," Urahara said, narrowing his eyes. "I sent him there. Get Ichigo back first. Avoid any unexpected incidents." "Incidents? Do you think Shinigami, Arrancar, or full-blooded Quincy might try something against Kurosaki Ichigo?" Yorichi's brows knit. Urahara's reminder made her see the seriousness immediately. "Exactly. Until we know what faction they belong to and what they want, Karakura Town is the safest place in the area," Urahara said with conviction. But before he could finish, the sky above the city split with a sudden rush of spiritual pressure. Clouds tore apart, and the air itself seemed to shudder. That's... In barely 3 seconds, both of their expressions changed. "Damn it, we were right. The Arrancar have come into the human world." From a distance, they could already feel it, the violent spiritual pressure unique to a Menos Grande. Someone in Karakura Town had ripped open a Garganta and brought Arrancar through. "Kisuke, what now? Strike first or wait?" Yorichi tightened her ponytail, hair flicking as she readied herself. Urahara considered, then said with calm confidence, "If nothing goes wrong, the Arrancar probably don't know Ichigo's identity yet. That's our biggest advantage." "Then we wait," Yorichi decided. "Head to Karakura First High and link up with Isshin and his son." "Right. Call Tessai too. We'll need a Kido master," she added, rubbing her hands together. "Of course." Urahara's grin widened. With an ambush, the former great Taoist will be more than enough for the Arrancar. Over the city, the clouds completely dispersed and a deep, yawning garganta tore open in the blue sky. 3 powerful figures strode through it, flanked by snarling subordinates. "Shh, the human world, huh? More civilized than I thought," Grimjo said, hands in his pockets as he took in the skyline. "Yammy, Grimjo." Okiora's voice was detached as he issued orders. "Time is short. The disturbance from our crossing will alert the Gotei 13 soon. You each take your men and split up. Find Kurosaki Ichigo as quickly as possible. 12th Division, Technology Development Bureau, Monitoring Hall. Alarm!" Lights flashed and sirens wailed as the monitor screens in the hall suddenly filled with red. "What? The human world's been breached?" Akon's face went red and his pupils widened. A rancor in the human world at this moment. He hadn't expected it. "They'll be after Kurosaki Ichigo, maybe Ishida Uryu," Mayuri observed, his eyes flashing. Unlike his flustered subordinates, Mayuri had anticipated this possibility and had decided not to warn everyone earlier. He was still irritated about Ishida's rise. Withholding a warning suited his purposes. "Captain, what do we do?" Akon asked, sweating. The monitor's alert level had maxed out, the Shudora level. That meant at least 3 Ajucha's level spiritual pressures had appeared in the human world. Akon's throat went dry. 3 Ajucha's level Arankar on the human world's soil was a major incident, something that hadn't happened in nearly 100 years. "So?" Mayuri's tone was cold and infuriatingly calm. "Akon, did you forget? Kuchiki Byakuya and the others left recently, facing 2 listed Shinigami powers already there." He let the rest trail off. Mayuri sneered. "I doubt even the Arankar will act recklessly when they meet them. Reinforcements? Dream on. If you've made the list, deal with it yourselves." Akon opened his mouth and shut it again, speechless. He left in a state of helpless frustration. Mayuri watched the red light blink on the screen and smiled thinly. "Ishida Uryu, if you die in the coming chaos, you'll save me the trouble." Inside the Dankai barrier, the Senkaimon party moved onward. Captain Kuchiki, Captain Hitsugaya, one of the seated officers reported respectfully, "We'll reach Karakura town in 200 meters. The coordinates center around the city area." "Good. Follow the original plan. Search outward from Karakura town until Kurosaki Ichigo is located," Toshiro ordered solemnly. This operation had been commanded by the captain commander himself. Failure was not an option. Byakuya, draped in his windflower scarf, spoke calmly. "Renji, you and I will begin searching to the east." "Understood." Renji Abarai cracked his knuckles, restless. It was his first time heading to the human world, and the red-haired Shinigami had been impatient ever since they passed through the Senkaimon. With the plan set, Byakuya and Renji led the group to the passage's exit. Chapter 108, Section 108. But what happened next stunned everyone beyond measure. "Tear!" A dark passage opened and the Shinigami squad poured out. Before they could land properly, 2 figures streaked past in the distance, accompanied by an overwhelming press of spiritual energy. "This is Espada?" Toshiro froze, a cold sweat breaking out across his skin when he could clearly make out their forms. The one on the left was massive and savage-faced, a remnant of an Arankar mask clinging to his chin. This guy, Toshiro realized at once. Isn't this Yami, the Espada who showed up first and got beaten during Urahara Kisuke's review? What made him even more uneasy was the figure beside Yami. Short, spiky black hair, 2 lines of dark green beneath his eyes, a long white coat, and a zanpakuto at his waist. Ulquiorra. An Espada. Toshiro had never seen before, and the Reiatsu he gave off was several times Yami's. "Who is this guy?" His emerald eyes were filled with wariness. As Toshiro's gaze landed on Ulquiorra, his hand moved instinctively to his waist and drew Hyorinmaru. Strength recognizes strength. A single look told him this Arankar had the power of a Murcielago, a great black-winged demon. A hard intuition hit Toshiro. Even if he and Kuchiki Byakuya fought with everything they had, they might not be able to defeat this melancholic Arankar. "It's a Vasto Lord." Kuchiki Byakuya's expression grew grave. "It seems the Arankar saw the review video too," he said. "Like us, they want to find Kurosaki Ichigo." He turned to Toshiro Hitsugaya, eyes cold and determined. "We cooperate again. We recreate the glory from the review and stop these 2 Espada together. Unless both of us fall, we will not let this Vasto Lord take a single step away." At the same time, Yami and Ulquiorra had spotted the Shinigami. Yami gaped. They had split into 3 groups after leaving the Garganta to sweep Karakura town for Kurosaki Ichigo, and Ulquiorra had chosen to pair with Yami to rein in his partner's habit of causing needless commotion. They had just arrived over the urban area when, by an incredible coincidence, they ran into the Shinigami who had just landed. A narrow escape. "Yami, don't panic," Ulquiorra said, keeping one hand in his pocket, his face as expressionless as ever. "Although there are 4 captain-level Shinigami, the Reiatsu of 2 is negligible." He spoke with absolute confidence and an icy edge. "Kuchiki Byakuya and Toshiro Hitsugaya are not important. This is not the future. They are insignificant now. I will act. I will make a hollow-sized hole in each of their chests." Clang! Sparks flew as blades met in the sky above Karakura town. Figures crossed and recoiled, Zanpakuto clashing in a barrage of steel and energy. Yami fired a massive sero that shredded the pink cherry blossom petals Byakuya had sent scattering toward him. A mocking grin split his face. "Kuchiki Byakuya," Yami boomed. "Those toy petals, who do you think you can hurt with them? Your rank is a joke." Yami's voice dripped contempt. After a brief exchange, he no longer feared any deterrent the ranking list might hold. His confidence swelled anew. Ulquiorra had been right. These current forms of the Shinigami captains were far weaker than their future selves. They were not to be feared. Across from him, Kuchiki Byakuya's face was stern. He wanted to refute Yami, but the situation was plainly unfavorable and left him with little confidence. "Damn it," Tushiro murmured through gritted teeth. "The Espada are far stronger than we imagined. The review didn't make time leap forward for them." Tushiro's opponent was Ulquiorra, the melancholic, tear-marked Arankar who always kept one hand in his pocket. No matter how Tushiro swung Hyorinmaru, his blasts of cold and roaring ice dragons were effortlessly snapped aside by Ulquiorra with a single hand, without the Arankar even visibly moving. "Hey! Arankar, what's your rank among the Espada?" Abarai Renji, hovering diagonally above Tushiro, shouted as he and Matsumoto Ranjiku entered the fray. Even with 3 against 1, they could not phase Ulquiorra's arm. It was crushingly demoralizing. "4th, Espada," Ulquiorra replied coolly. "Murcielago," Ulquiorra Seifer. Renji's grip tightened on his Zanpakuto. Learning Ulquiorra's rank, 4th Espada, and essentially Vasto Lord level, made him feel even more hopeless. He had thought they were on a sightseeing mission in the human world, planning to follow Captain Kuchiki and take it easy, but fate had thrown a Vasto Lord at them the moment they landed. His luck felt absurdly bad. He almost spat blood at the thought. He also underestimated Ulquiorra's ruthlessness. "Sonido?" Ulquiorra's figure blurred. In an instant, he was in front of Renji. An iron-hard, impossibly sharp blade formed from his arm, flashed through Renji's chest amid a spray of sparks. "Ugh, you." Renji's pupils widened as searing pain hit his chest. His face drained, color ebbing away as if the tide had retreated. Ulquiorra did not even look up. "Nameless Shinigami," he said flatly. "Trash like you isn't even worthy of being my opponent." He twisted his arm and churned flesh at the wound before pulling the blade free. With a casual flick, Renji's body went limp and fell like a kite with a broken string, plunging through midair and slamming into a nearby skyscraper. "Renji!" Kuchiki Byakuya's composure shattered at the sight of his vice-captain struck down. He shouted in alarm, and that outcry only added to the chaos of the battle. That slip let him reveal a weakness in battle. "Kuchiki Byakuya, instead of worrying about your subordinates, you should worry about your own life." Yami's sinister laugh came from ahead, followed by a sudden surge of crimson light. "This is a hollow flash?" Even though Byakuya reacted instantly, the crimson beam had already blasted from Yami's palm. It carried a tyrannical, oppressive aura and surged forward like a torrent of steel. There was no time to dodge. Byakuya had only just begun to gather his cherry blossom blades when his figure was engulfed by the crimson flash. In a matter of minutes, the tide of the battle reversed. What had been 4 against 2 collapsed back into 2 against 2. The Shinigami were suddenly at a severe disadvantage. Meanwhile, on the Karakura High campus, Ichigo, Orihime, and Chad stood shoulder to shoulder at the school gates, confronting Isshin Kurosaki. "Dad!" Ichigo demanded. "Until you explain everything, we're not leaving with you," Orihime added, determined. Isshin was sweating from more than the heat of the day. His face mixed irritation with amusement. His son's questions left him helpless. Ichigo, there's no time to explain, he said. A battle's broken out between the Arrancar and the Shinigami. We have to use every second we can to get out of here. He glanced toward the southeast, where the Espada and the Shinigami captains were clashing. Arrancar? Shinigami captains? You knew all this and never told me? What did the Quincy King mean? Why have you been hiding this? Ichigo's questions tumbled out. He hadn't yet grasped the full scale of what was happening. More than listening, he wanted answers to the mounting mysteries about his origins. Ishin's mouth twitched. Sai, my boy, listen to your old man. Before he could finish, a new voice cut through the air. Ha! Looks like I was right. Just like Sayalaporo guessed, you really are a human high school student. Grimjo! Ichigo and the others cried out, looking up. For a moment, neither had been able to clearly see spiritual bodies, but for some reason, perhaps because of Ishin and the inventory video, they could make out Grimjo's form in the sky. The blue-haired Espada peered down with a savage grin, fangs bared. If you recognize me, then you've seen the inventory video. You know why I've come. Grimjo's fierce gaze locked on Ichigo. Human, don't struggle. The moment I appeared here, you were marked to be taken back to Hueco and imprisoned. His words were a cold declaration of Ichigo's fate. At that instant, the transparent screen that had been showing the inventory flickered with static and resumed. New subtitles scrolled across it, and when the latest lines appeared, the same stunned exclamation rose from all corners of the world. What? No way. 5th place is him. As the new round of the inventory rolled out and the most recent lines became clear, shock rippled everywhere. The human world, Hueco Soul Society, the Wandenreich, everyone reacted at once. In Seirete, the uproar was deafening. Within the Gotei 13 barracks, it was almost a riot. The strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years, founder of the Gotei 13, wielder of the fiercest fire-type Zanpakuto, Ryujin Jaka, Yamamoto Jonryusai. In the 1st Division Captain's office, Chojiro Sasakibe read aloud with a trembling voice. His face turned ashen. He could scarcely keep standing. The Captain Commander ranked only 5th? The result was absurd and unacceptable. A scorching pressure began to build beside him. Yamamoto himself, who had been sitting calmly at his desk, had snapped after reading the same line. Bastard! For a moment his face, usually impassive as stone, betrayed him. Fury erupted behind his pale brows like a waking volcano. So that's it. The old man's finally angry. Outside the captain's office, officers and seated members of Squad 1 felt the change in the air. Their expressions shifted to alarm. In living memory, apart from when the Visored seized power, the Captain Commander had never been so furious. A heavy unease spread through the room. Then an explosion of flame ripped through the door. Boom! The spiritual pressure was vivid red, no longer a vague sensation, but a tangible, fire-tinged force. The door splintered. Flying fragments turned to ash the moment they were caught in the heat. The Captain Commander's wrath was not just an emotion. It was a spiritual oppression so powerful it filled the entirety of Squad 1's barracks like an ancient volcano erupting. Only a few veteran officers who had served Yamamoto for centuries could withstand it. The rest were overwhelmed. Those closest to the office fainted where they sat, their bodies unable to handle the oppressive pressure. Some collapsed with the moisture in their bodies, having been driven away by the heat. And this was only the spiritual pressure he'd emitted unintentionally, not even the full force of Ryujin Jaka. It was a glimpse of the power of the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years, and a measure of how sullen and indignant the old man had become in that instant. Chapter 110, Section 110, at the same time, 5th Division, the Underground Private Chamber. Captain Aizen, did you feel that pressure? It's coming from the direction of the 1st Division. Ichimaru Gin, who had been reeling from the rankings, finally found himself able to speak. A hot gust brushed past him. He looked instinctively toward the 1st Division, a tangled expression passing over his face. It seems the old man is angry. Aizen's lips curved into a faint, amused smile. Jin, isn't that to be expected? Even I was surprised when I saw the results. Aizen wasn't putting on an act this time. He truly believed it. Yes, he had always believed he would outgrow the Captain Commander, that he would ascend to the very top through unmatched power. but that had always been a possibility, contingent on obtaining the complete Hogyoku and perfectly integrating his soul with it. He had not expected the captain commander to be ranked only 5th. If that was true, then his future self would certainly surpass the strongest Shinigami of 1,000 years. The corner of Aizen's mouth lifted into a deeper smile. Somewhere in him, the seeds of his defection hardened into something immovable. Who would have thought, Gin muttered aloud, voicing what every spectator had felt, that even the mighty Captain Commander, the name every Shinigami respects and fears, wouldn't even make the top 3. It's staggering. Over the course of watching the future rundowns, the power levels of every faction had become clear. The Arrancar were at the bottom. None of them made the list, and several were repeatedly cut down in the footage. Above them came the captains of the Gotei 13, each demonstrating terrifying abilities and unfamiliar techniques, each backed by an impressive combat record. And on top of that were the pure-blood Quincy of the Wandenreich, above all the 4 members of Squad Zero, whose absurdly abnormal powers had left viewers cursing in disbelief. So in Gin's view, Yhwach, the Quincy King, would surely be among the top 3 within the Soul Society. No question, that left only one other place. Gin frowned. So besides Aizen and Yhwach, who were the 2 people ranked above the Captain Commander? Could it be Squad Zero? Unlikely. Weren't those show-off types taken out with a single headshot in the highlights? Or that monk who flashed on the screen for a moment. He remembered the broad-eyed monk who seemed to be the head of Squad Zero. He hadn't revealed his full strength. If it was him, he might indeed exceed the Captain Commander. But who was the final person? Gin racked his brain and found no clues. 13th Division, Yukitake. You must be as shocked as I am. Kyoraku Shunsui had peeled off his floral kimono. His back was slick with cold sweat. His weathered face looked older than ever, etched with surprise and uncertainty. The Captain Commander relegated to 5th place? 4 people stronger than the man who had been the spiritual and military leader of the Gotei 13 for centuries? Impossible. For as long as anyone could remember, a single rumor had settled into the hearts of every Shinigami. Ryujin Jaka is the strongest. Commander Yamamoto cannot be defeated. Even after watching countless rundown reels, no one had ever truly doubted that the old man would belong in the top 3. To see him pushed down so far was unprecedented and utterly bewildering. As Shunsui wrestled with the shock, the on-screen subtitles faded. The camera cut to a new battlefield, and the Captain Commander's voice, suddenly loud and furious, filled the air. Kyoraku Shunsui, Jushiro Ukitake. For a long time I never imagined I would have to fight the cowardly brats who run off, much less you 2, who aided those Ryoka and endangered the stability of the Soul Society. Come on, my 2 students. There is no need for empty words. Draw your Zanpakuto and prove your right to speak before me with your strength. The words detonated in Shunsui's mind. Everything else shattered. The footage switched to a close-up on the Captain Commander, and what followed was nothing short of terrifying. Chapter 95, Overwhelming Suppression. Ryujin Jaka. The old man's murky, aged eyes cleared in an instant. His bent back straightened like a staff, and a vigor that had seemed lost to time flared through him. Flames, burning with such heat they blazed like living sun rays, leapt from his eyebrows, willowy arcs of fire that licked the air. The presence he radiated was like a human sun. Even before the screen, viewers felt the pressure as if the temperature itself rose. The Captain Commander is like a living sun. His very eyebrows are aflame. This is absurd. What kind of might is this? Truly worthy of being the strongest Shinigami of 1,000 years. To provoke the Captain Commander, only Kyoraku and Ukitake would dare, right? Across the Seirete, countless eyes were glued to the images with dread and reverence. The flames on his brows seemed to boil the air itself. Even through the broadcast, the heat could be felt. If Hyorin Maru, the supreme ice Zanpakuto, could alter climate with a swing, then Yamamoto, with a thought and the release of Ryujin Jaka, could lay waste to the Soul Society itself. This, the footage insisted, was the true meaning of the strongest of 1,000 years. Ukitake, what's going on? Why would the 2 of us provoke the old man in the future? It looks like he's even going to draw Ryujin Jaka. Shunsui paced like an ant on a hot pan, drenched in sweat. Once Ryujin Jaka was unleashed, it would not be something soothed by words. People would die. Jushiro Ukitake's face remained unreadable, his expression flickering between fear and something else. Guilt, perhaps, or resignation. The future reel left both men with more questions than answers, and the silence between them was thick with dread. Section 111. His white hair and pallid face glowed an angry crimson in the video's light. Assisting the Ryoka? Undermining the stability of Soul Society? I, Ukitake, am an old invalid. I can barely keep up with my medicine. How could I possibly have time to do something so rebellious and unfilial? He glanced sideways at Kyoraku Shunsui, who returned the gaze with an accusing look. Isn't that question better directed at yourself? It was your mischief that provoked him in the first place. I've been wronged. Shunsui was nearly in tears. Brother, am I really so full of myself that I would pick a fight with the old man on purpose? That would be foolish even for a newborn soul in Soul Society, let alone for me, an old fox who has lived for centuries. If he could choose, Kyoraku Shunsui would have loved nothing more than to slap his future self hard. Who else but him would dare to rile the Captain Commander? The power of Ryujin Jaka is not something to trifle with. Within the camera's frame, the Captain Commander was burning, an all-consuming red light radiating from him. The air stilled, clouds dispersed. Above Soul Society, beneath the open sky, his towering figure alone remained, like a living god of flame. His Reiatsu surged in an instant, to a scale that threatened to shatter the camera itself. Clearly, this was the precursory release of Ryujin Jaka. I never thought I'd get to see the full release of Ryujin Jaka in a compilation video. What a rare and magnificent gift. Ichimaru Gin's bangs clung damply to his forehead from sweat, but his fox-like smile showed keen anticipation. Ryujin Jaka, the Zanpakuto renowned as the most devastating of them all, was something he had longed to see unleashed. Indeed, Aizen murmured. Even Shunsui and Ukitake would be uneasy if they faced a fully released Ryujin Jaka, wouldn't they? At his words, flames roared skyward in the footage. The Captain Commander's already scorching presence escalated, and the stagnant air of Soul Society turned into a furnace. The rattan cane he held began to swell as if swollen by heat. Splinters flew off like rusted flakes. The viewers watching the screen felt it instinctively. Something enormous was about to happen. As the Captain Commander chanted, an ancient incantation like a voice reborn from the past, heat intensified until it felt as if the camera itself might fry. All things in the universe, turn to ash! Ryujin Jaka! He drew his true blade as if pulling a sun from its sheath. When he gripped the sword, Ryujin Jaka itself shifted. Blistering flames crawled along the blade and licked at his robes and haori. He held the sword in one hand, surrounded by red, solar-like flares. Instantly, tens of thousands of viewers felt moisture evaporate from their skin. Some swore they could feel their blood drying. "This is too terrifying," someone shouted. Behind the Captain Commander, towering pillars of fire rose and multiplied. Ordinary Shinigami were driven back. Even some captains could barely keep their composure. A handful, Aizen and Unohana among them, managed to remain standing. Others had their hair catch fire or faint outright from dehydration. Those who stayed huddled together and pooled their reiatsu, desperately trying to weather the scorching gale blasting from the screen. This was the effect of being separated in time and space. Imagine then how Kyoraku Shunsui and Jushiro Ukitake, standing there in person, must have felt, trapped in a living furnace. "Shunsui Ukitake," someone whispered. "It's been many years since Ryujin Jaka last released," another voice said. Enveloped in boundless fire, the Captain Commander's expression grew colder. "Precisely because so much time has passed, you grew arrogant," he intoned. "You deluded yourselves into believing you could challenge this old man." He lifted the blazing blade and with one measured motion cut the air. Boom! The blast was like billions of detonations. The camera's signal flickered and died under the shock, then returned. Where once there had been greenery, now lay charred earth and blackened stone, everything incinerated to ash. Ryujin Jaka had laid waste to the land itself. Holding the sword, his white brows and long beard swept in the heat. The Captain Commander's voice, like a roaring bonfire, boomed out, "Dare to challenge me, and you will be burned alive. Even if you were my most prized students, I will not show mercy." A gentle slash from his blade sent a torrent of searing crimson fire shooting into the sky, spiraling into a cataclysmic, world-consuming tornado. Boom. This time, the heat warped the sky itself. The air ruptured in waves. From the compilation camera's perspective, the whole firmament seemed to groan on the verge of shattering. The scene sent shockwaves through every watching Shinigami and through the wider Soul Reaper world. Even space is affected? Someone gasped. This is absurd. He only swung once. I wonder, if the Captain Commander slashed toward the camera, could Ryujin Jaka's blade tear through time and space and reach the human world? What terrifies me most is that even he is only ranked 5th. If 4 captains are above him, can they not with ease destroy all of Soul Society? Those weaker among the Shinigami stepped back from the screen, afraid of any lingering ember. The timid clustered in small groups, drawing courage from one another to keep watching. In the eyes of most people, the Captain Commander was no longer merely the stern, benevolent elder they remembered. On the screen, he had become something else entirely, a burning judge, remade by the absolute, annihilating force of Ryujin Jaka. Section 112. Instead of anything subtle, he became a human sun, a terrifying, mobile nuclear bomb. Once the Captain Commander was provoked, let alone Kyoraku Shunsui and Jushiro Ukitake, from the nearby Seirete to the 80th district of Rukongai, destruction was only a thought away whenever Yamamoto moved. No one doubted he could do it. Captains, aren't you being too stubborn? How dare you rile up such a terrifying old man? Nano Isa hid timidly behind Kyoraku, struggling to breathe under the oppressive heat of Ryujin Jaka. If it weren't for Kyoraku constantly shielding her, the vice captain would have long since passed out from suffocation. You'll have to ask Ukitake about that. It's not my fault, Kyoraku said shamelessly, spreading his hands in feigned innocence. Ukitake's face went pale with anger. Good heavens, what nerve! It's clearly your fault. In the recorded footage, after Ryujin Jaka was released, both Kyoraku and Ukitake had already activated their Shikai. Wielding their twin blades, they wore grave expressions that contrasted starkly with the casual faces watching the screen. Seeing his 2 beloved subordinates oppose him only stirred Captain Yamamoto's fury further. Ryujin Jaka, torch! The low roar sounded like the horn of doomsday. The Captain Commander swung his Zanpakuto again. Blazing, crimson flames like a solar disk tore the sky apart, whipping violently around his body. The heat was so intense that buildings at a distance began to show signs of melting. No, I can't take it anymore. If I keep watching, my organs will incinerate. As Yamamoto's fury climbed, more and more viewers showed symptoms, fainting, heat stroke, as if they might spontaneously combust. That was only the beginning. When Yamamoto raised his scarred arm once more and, with a murderous glare, slashed toward the camera, the true nightmare arrived. Natazange! With a single stroke, a massive, sword-shaped wave of fiery red energy unleashed, its heat capable of burning the sky and boiling the sea. It spread like a storm cloud, filling the entire screen with an all-consuming blaze. The scene became nothing but crimson fire and the impending inferno ready to swallow the viewer. Scatter! Everybody, scatter! The imagery was too realistic. Even though the battle was set in the distant future, and the intended victims of the slash were Kyoraku and Ukitake within the recording, the vivid, suffocating dread of death made countless people instinctively flee from the transparent screens. For a moment, Yamamoto's Natazange sent the entire Shinigami world into unprecedented panic. Wherever a transparent screen showed the footage, Human World, Hueco Mundo, Soul Society, even the Wandenreich of the pure-blood Quincy, the same desperate scenes of flight played out. Ryujin Jaka, the strongest fire type. From now on, those words would be branded into everyone's mind like a red-hot nail. The fiery blade swept through the frame and smashed toward the camera. Kyoraku, Ukitake, and the whole backdrop vanished into the maw of the flames. The master-disciple confrontation ended there, and the Captain Commander paused the playback. Captain Commander. Chojiro Sasakibe bowed quickly, relieved to see the old man's expression soften at the recording. Although the ranking system has serious problems, those scenes must have left the world in awe of Ryujin Jaka's might. That's good news in a way. Yamamoto suppressed a satisfied smile, but studied the footage with a solemn mien. I don't know why my future self would fight Shunsui and the others, but that battle confirmed some things I suspected. He nodded, thinking aloud. I believe the so-called Ryoka invasion must have been led by Kurosaki Ichigo. Ah? Him again? Chojiro tensed. This Ichigo seemed to be everywhere in the future. I can't prove it absolutely, Yamamoto said, but since he appears repeatedly on the screen, he won't be a minor character who dies midway. That supports my earlier conjecture. To Chojiro's surprise, the captain commander spoke highly of Ichigo. Clearing his throat, Yamamoto's tone grew serious. If he can persist to the end and is worthy of Yhwach welcoming him back, then I dare say, among those 4 ranked above me, perhaps Ichigo will have a place. A shocking claim. Personal recognition from the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years. Chojiro could hardly swallow. Exactly, Yamamoto continued flatly. This old man believes that human boy named Ichigo will one day be stronger than me. Chapter 97. Holy crap, are we 3 exposed? Human world, outskirts of Karakura town, inside the Vizard's hideout. Ah, even 100 years from now, Captain Yamamoto's suppressive power is still overwhelming. Hirako Shinji's face showed delighted shock. He hadn't yet recovered from the release of Ryujin Jaka. It was beyond exaggeration. Each pillar of flame alone could seriously harm a captain, and that was just the Zanpakuto's basic expression. Every swing of the sword was an all-consuming Nadazange. Ryujin Jaka deserved its reputation as the strongest fire-type Zanpakuto in Soul Society. If you ask me, Kyoraku and Ukitake had it coming. Who in their right mind would go out of their way to provoke that irritable old man? Kensei Muguruma wiped his brow. In the short time he'd watched the footage, he'd sweated more than after 3 days and nights of exercise. Speaking of which, Love Aikawa's gaze drifted from the transparent screen to the window facing Karakura town. His expression turned grave. The best part is over. It's time to go help people, isn't it? Help people? Rojuro Otorabashi frowned. You mean save those scoundrels from the Gotei 13? If this were before, I'd be 1,000 times unwilling. But now, stroking his long, golden waves of hair, Rojuro's face flashed with a complicated look. Since learning he would return to the Gotei 13 in the future, he had been letting go of old prejudices and trying to accept those future colleagues. The others felt the same. The sight of everyone charging at Miracle Man had unexpectedly moved the Vizards. What's more, the reason they defected back then? In the end, it had all been Aizen, the mastermind pulling the strings. That made it less of a personal vendetta and more of a tactical problem, so the Vizard decided they could set aside their grudges and focus on rescuing the captives for now. Hirako Shinji stretched, rubbed his ears, scooped his hat back onto his unruly hair, and flashed an excited grin. All right, no more dilly-dallying, he said. Who wants to come with me to save them? Sign up! I'll go. Me too. Count me in. And me. Except for Hiyori Saragaki, who stubbornly refused, everyone else volunteered immediately, eager for a shot at the Arankar. Right, we'll split into 2 teams. Hachi, Kensei, and I will head to Karakura Town City Center. The rest of you go to the high school to provide support. Hirako shouldered his Zanpakuto and led the way. The others followed. Their figures vanished from the abandoned warehouse in a blink. Meanwhile, at Karakura First High School, Dad! Ichigo's scream ripped through the courtyard. Across from him, Kurosaki Isshin lay impaled through the abdomen on Grimjo's jagged arm blade. Blood spread dark around him. Ichigo, get out of here! Isshin fought to shout through the pain, every word a struggle. Run, Ichigo! Shh! Trying to escape, it'll be your turn next, you 3. Grimjo sneered, and with a contemptuous flick, he tossed the wounded Isshin aside like refuse. He turned to face Ichigo. His cat-like fangs gleamed in a grin that promised only death. It's over, Ichigo whispered. Why is he attacking us? We didn't do anything. It's just because of that inventory video. Orihime sobbed, terrified and trembling. She had never seen such carnage. Orihime, go! I'll hold him off. Yasutora Sato bellowed, stepping between Grimjo and the others, ready to die for his friends. Playing the hero? How naive! Grimjo roared, baring his teeth as he lunged for Sato, his arm blade poised to strike. But at the crucial moment, something unexpected happened. The carriage of thunder, the gap in the spinning wheel, this thing has light divided into 6. A clear voice intoned, Bakudo incantation, out of nowhere. 6 shards of pale light formed around Grimjo, like the bars of an inescapable cage, freezing him mid-lunge. Grimjo looked down, annoyed and surprised. He twisted instinctively, but his body didn't respond. He couldn't break free. Angered, he bellowed, "Who is it? Who's attacking me from behind? Show yourself." "Oh ho ho ho." A relaxed chuckle answered him. A green-clad figure stepped forward beside Ichigo. Wearing wooden clogs and fanning himself with a folding fan, Urahara Kisuke walked up casually. His smile was playful, almost bored, as he regarded the Leopard King. "You are Urahara Kisuke!" Ichigo, Sato, and Orihime stared, disbelief and relief flooding their faces. They recognized the man who'd been one of the names in the first round's inventory, a savior arriving at the last moment. "Urahara, please, save us. Dad's going to die," Ichigo pleaded. "Heh, Ichigo, don't get so impatient." Urahara glanced at Isshin, lying in a spreading pool of blood, and gave a mischievous smirk. "Isshin's a tough old coot. It's a rare chance. Let him lie there for a little while longer." Ichigo's expression twitched between anger and fear. What the hell? Friend or no friend, this was no time for teasing. His father could bleed out any second. But Urahara ignored Ichigo's frantic stare and refocused on Grimjo. "Grimjo." Urahara shook his head. "Your Arankars are such troublemakers. If they'd behaved, I might have been able to peacefully watch the whole broadcast about the old man in my shop. Ah, what a pity." His voice belied the movement of his hand. With an easy, almost lazy motion, he drew his Zanpakuto. Spiritual pressure flared, and Benihime sprang free with a cry like a bird calling. "Cry, Benihime!" A blood-red blade sliced through the air and lunged at Grimjo. At the same time, elsewhere, the transparent broadcasting screen that had been interrupted flickered back to life and switched to a new scene. Under a clear blue sky, a battlefield of crumpled high-rises and smoking ruins filled the view. Over it all came the thunderous voice of the captain commander, the flames of Ryujin Jaka roaring around his sword. "With me here," he declared. "You 3 dare not make a move in this war." The camera cut quickly. For those watching, the first sight was the captain commander swinging his flame-engulfed blade. In the 5th Division's underground chamber, Ichimaru Gin froze at the words. "Holy crap," Gin whispered. Captain Aizen said, the 3 people the old man mentioned. Could it be us 3? Panic flared through his features. His earlier curiosity vanished in an instant, replaced by raw fear and a sliver of hope that misfortune might yet pass them by. Aizen said nothing outwardly. His face remained composed, unreadable. But the wheels were turning behind those calm eyes. The same thought had touched him as well the moment he heard the commander. The 3 of us, could they have been exposed? He glanced at Ichimaru Gin and then at Tosen Kaname. "Jin, Kaname," he said softly after a moment. "If we have to leave Soul Society, the anti-escudo should allow us to descend unhindered, right?" Aizen asked, voice smooth as ever. "Have you already planned for the worst?" Tosen swallowed. Behind his blindfold, his face went pale. Astonishment and alarm crossed the half of his face that was visible. "I never expected this. It came out of nowhere. Because that inventory footage showed up prematurely, I've been forced to defect to Hueco Mundo earlier than planned." Aizen glared coldly at the blind man beside him. His voice was steady, his face unreadable, but the words carried an unmistakable edge. "If the camera switches later, pray it doesn't land on the 3 of us." With the captain commander's temper and his hatred of anything he deems rebellion, I don't believe he'll sit back in the 1st Division barracks and just watch a video. Even Aizen, so often composed, could not hide the irritation in his words. The resentment wasn't aimed at the captain commander, but at the creator of that accursed inventory video. If it hadn't been exposed prematurely, Kuchiki Rukia would already be in the human world and their plan would be proceeding on schedule. They would only have had to wait a little longer. Let Kurosaki Ichigo lure the intruders into the Soul Society, and then the Hogyoku inside Rukia would have been within reach. It was a bitter regret. But the video did switch, and everyone watching saw the captain commander raise his hand. The ancient man's latent spiritual pressure poured down like a volcanic furnace, scorching the ruined battlefield. Viewers who had barely composed themselves to continue watching bolted from their houses in terror. No one wanted to be caught in that again. Then the scene exploded. "Ryujin Jaka, Jokaku Enjo." He spoke without drama, But when the captain commander swung his Zanpakuto, a meteor-like shower of flames erupted from its tip, tearing the sky over Karakura town in two. Heaven and hell. The blaze was so vast the camera could not encompass it. It crawled along, always moving but never reaching an end. Under the captain commander's will, the world's scorching fire took shape as an immense wall, severing the scorched space from the rest of the world. Anyone trapped inside would be incinerated by temperatures thousands of degrees high. Escape was impossible. "You three have been completely sealed within by this old man," the captain commander said. "Repent within the barrier and watch as we annihilate the Arankar one by one." He did not name them. With a cold, expressionless motion, he sheathed Ryujin Jaka, and calm returned to the footage, but the implications of what had just been shown rippled through the watching souls. "That's strange," people murmured. He emphasized it twice. 3 people sealed inside that flame barrier. Who are they? In the 13th Division barracks, Kyoraku Shunsui frowned, catching that crucial detail. "He's furious at whoever's in there," he said. Jushiro Ukitake stroked his chin, thinking. The captain commander's tone was not only directed at enemies, it carried something else, a peculiar, personal emotion. If the sealed were only Arankar, the old man wouldn't be enraged like that. He was, after all, the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years. To be riled so would be beneath that stature. The only reasonable conclusion was that the 3 were familiar to him. A chill ran through Ukitake. If the captain commander was furious at recognizable faces, then this was more than a battle between Shinigami and Arankar. It suddenly suggested a war to root out traitors. The atmosphere thickened with dread. Behind them, Nanao Ise, who had nearly fainted from the display of Ryujin Jaka, spoke up with a pointed observation. "Captain Kyoraku, Captain Ukitake," she said, "have you noticed since the start of the inventory footage that nearly half of the Gotei 13 captains have appeared on camera?" She paused, eyes narrowing. "Only the captains of the 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th divisions haven't appeared in the battles against the Arankar and the full-blooded Quincy." Kyoraku's and Ukitake's expressions snapped into focus. The implication hit them like a blow. Could 3 of them be moles? Kyoraku breathed. The possibility turned the room cold. If even a few captains were secretly collaborating with Hueco Mundo, the betrayal would cut to the very heart of the Gotei. Elsewhere in the Seirete, the same unease spread, but in a far less dignified corner. In the barracks of the 2nd Division, Onoe Omaeda, never one to resist a joke, had spoken up with mock seriousness. "Maybe I'm one of the 3 sealed. After all, we haven't been on camera," he announced. "Idiot," snapped Suifeng without hesitation. She followed the words with a sharp kick, driving her heel into Omaeda's right buttock. He doubled over in shock. Between that blow and the one he'd received earlier to the left, both cheeks were protesting. "Ouch, I was only kidding. Don't be so brutal," he whined, clutching his sore rear. Suifeng's expression softened not an inch. "Stop talking nonsense. Instead of egging each other on, we need to calmly eliminate the suspects," she said. Her eyes narrowed as she ran through possibilities. Excluding herself and the captains who had already appeared in the human world, the most likely candidates were few. Jin Ichimaru, Kaname Tosen, Sajin Komamura, Aizen Sosuke too, and even Jushiro Ukitake. From Suifeng's point of view, Ukitake's absence from the final battle made him suspicious as well. Each captain's lack of appearance now weighed like a mark against them. The seeds of distrust had been sown across the Seirete, and every unanswered question deepened the shadow the inventory footage had cast. Chapter 115, Section 115. "Captain, among the 5 people you mentioned, can we rule out Captain Aizen first?" Omaeda blurted without thinking. "Rule out Aizen? Why?" Suifeng frowned. Years as captain commander of the Onmitsukido had trained her to instinctively suspect everyone. "Does that even need an explanation?" Omaeda looked at her with a bewildered expression. "Even a newcomer to the Gotei 13 knows Captain Aizen is universally loved. He's kind and gentle, approachable, considerate to his subordinates. He pours himself into the 5th Division and even teaches calligraphy at the Spiritual Arts Academy. How could you suspect such a popular captain of being an internal spy? Are you kidding me? Besides, you can't just single him out because he's well-liked." He rattled off every virtue and impression attached to Aizen, insisting his identity had to be a good guy card. Suifeng's frown deepened, her resolve wavering. Yes, Omaeda was right. Aizen was undeniably the kindest, most even-tempered captain in the Gotei 13. If he'd never gone off-screen during the war, Suifeng would have never suspected him. But precisely because he had been absent from every important battle, a troubling possibility suggested itself. Either Aizen had died before the Thousand-Year Blood War started, and that explained his absence. What? Captain Aizen will meet misfortune in the future? Omaeda reacted with shocked anger. So good people don't deserve to live. In the 5th Division's underground secret room. Phew, Ichimaru patted his chest, still shaken. That was close. If those towering flame barriers hadn't formed, our identities would have been exposed. He had been so frightened he felt he'd almost lost his soul. If the camera had been pointed directly at them as Aizen warned, the entire 5th Division might already be caught in a dragnet. Given the Captain Commander's temper, even from a hidden underground base, he would have ordered every Shinigami turned over and every inch of ground dug up until the traitors were found. Aizen wasn't afraid of exposure, but he had prepared for a worst-case escape. The sudden timing of the camera switch had surprised even him. It was so coincidental, he briefly suspected the footage's author had placed a listening device nearby. Captain Aizen, the old man sheathed his Zanpakuto and made no further move. It looks like we're temporarily safe in this clip, Gin observed. After the Jokaku Enjo was set, the Captain Commander hadn't continued the assault. He'd stopped shouting, stopped drawing his weapon, even ignored the 3 menacing espada standing before him. From previous rounds of the reviews, Gin was certain this short scene should be coming to an end. Sure enough, just as he finished speaking, the video froze on the hundreds of meters high flame barriers, then went dark. The 3 people trapped inside, including Aizen, never exposed. Luck had protected them once more. But the screen didn't linger. Almost immediately, the footage fast-forwarded into the next battle. The viewers watching the review were startled by a deafening crash as something heavy slammed into the camera's view. "What's that flying toward the camera?" someone cried. A massive white figure, like a bowling ball-sized body, was hurled violently toward the lens and rapidly filled the frame with bone-chilling realism. The sight made many viewers gasp. "This round of the Captain Commander review is scarier than a horror movie," someone muttered. "If this keeps up, I'll have a heart attack before it's over." "Is that a Resurrección Arrancar?" another asked. How could something like that challenge the Captain Commander? Through the smoke and dust, the Arrancar's Resurrection form, the Extinguisher Prince, revealed itself, wholly white, broad-limbed, a high, prominent skull shaped like a fire extinguisher. When the dust cleared, Wonderweiss, as always, issued his indistinct babble. Wah! It sounded like a scream, a roar, and the cry of a baby all at once. Beneath his hollow mask, a greedy smile seemed to spread after devouring the flames. At that sight, Aizen's eyes lit up in the underground room. "Jin, more good news," he said, an almost triumphant smile curling his lips. "It seems that in that war, Wonderweiss successfully fulfilled his mission and sealed all the flames of Ryujinjaka." "Yes, Captain Aizen," Gin chuckled, narrowing his eyes. "I'm curious to see if Wonderweiss can follow that up and take down the Captain Commander while he's temporarily without Ryujinjaka." As if in reply, the Captain Commander's voice, deep as an abyss, came through the footage from the other side of the battlefield. "Do you think sealing Ryujinjaka gives you the chance to defeat this old man?" he thundered. "Naive. An utterly childish idea." His voice was accompanied by the sound of fabric tearing. The Captain Commander's old robe and Captain's Haori burst open. Beneath, exaggerated muscles coiled and stacked like pythons, rippling in fluid lines. The body of the supposed 1,000-year-old man tensed to the limit, and he roared with a force that belied his age. "Even bare-handed, this old man can still blow you all away." At that moment, the viewers outside the room felt a wave of pressure wash over them through the screen. Comments flooded with disbelief. Such exaggerated muscles. That's not the body of an old man. But what does it mean that Ryujinjaka was sealed? That thing actually sealed the strongest fire-type Zanpakuto. There was another source of shock. The Captain Commander's declaration implied Ryujinjaka had indeed been sealed. a staggering claim considering the Zanpakuto's overwhelming firepower had already been demonstrated in the previous footage. The idea that anyone could forcibly seal such a weapon seemed impossible. Yet here, on the recording, the Captain Commander himself claimed it had been sealed, and then showed that, even without it, he still possessed terrifying power. Watching the footage unfold left everyone watching speechless, the impossible suddenly made tangible by what they were seeing. From the Captain Commander's deliberate shedding of his clothes, it was obvious this was the real thing. Ryujin Jaka was sealed. He just showed his Zanpakuto, and now he's going to show his Hakuda? The old man really is playful, Ichimaru Gin teased, though his narrowed eyes betrayed his unease. Fortunately, he was only standing behind the transparent viewing screen as a spectator. If he had been on the battlefield and taken one of the old man's blows, his bones would have shattered. Be patient and watch. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Unlike Gin, Aizen was utterly focused. As the ruler of Hueco Mundo and one of the 5 people featured in the final inventory, he knew he was watching the Captain Commander directly. Thanks to the leaked inventory footage, Aizen could calmly observe Yamamoto's true capabilities as a spectator. He had poured nearly all his attention into this recording. When the last scraps of black and white clothing turned to dust, the Captain Commander pressed his hands together, stepped into a deep horse stance, and drew in a breath like a drawn blade. Boom! A blast of white reiatsu erupted from him in a rolling wave, like a tornado linking earth and sky. The inventory camera shook violently. Viewers were thrown back by the force. The Captain Commander is making his move. Everyone craned forward, afraid to miss a moment. If it were only my Zanpakuto. Yamamoto's voice cut through the roar. I would never have sat as Captain Commander for 1,000 years. You who cling to a single fire-sealing skill could never understand. As he spoke, the outward spiritual pressure collapsed and was reabsorbed into him, compressing until it poured into his fists. Bone showed clearly beneath skin, and both hands glowed with a thin, transparent white aura. He had become a walking wrecking ball. A one-punch man. But Wonderweiss, the so-called Extinguisher Prince, was an odd Arankar fashioned by Aizen with the Hogyoku. He had no sense of decorum and no comprehension of taunting words. He only heard insult. With a keening, inhuman wail, he launched himself forward with Sonido, closing the distance to the Captain Commander under the stunned eyes of thousands. That Arankar's bold, commented Zaraki Kenpachi from the 11th Division. Even Zaraki, reckless as he was, wouldn't dare provoke Yamamoto like that. Then Wonderweiss unleashed a roar, Hyaki Gotei, and his shoulders split open. Countless white tentacles surged out like a tidal wave and engulfed the Captain Commander's silhouette. Trying to defy fate? Foolish, Yamamoto said, raising his gaze without moving his feet. Hakuda technique. Sokatsu! His clenched fists drove forward into the air. 2 rings of white lights snapped outward. Each of those blows carried enough force to level the taller structures on the battlefield. Flesh and blood splattered. The tentacles and Wonderweiss himself were struck to nothing. They vanished instantly, leaving no dust, no trace, simply gone. The residual shockwave swept past the camera and every onlooker, a physical blast that tousled hair and left everyone gasping. The power of Sokatsu seemed to rupture something about space itself. Its impact felt as if it reverberated through past and future. No one had ever seen anything like it in the inventory footage. Even without his Zanpakuto, the old man's strength is monstrous. Ichimaru mopped cold sweat from his face, secretly grateful that Jokaku Enjo had been sealed beforehand. Otherwise, that punch might have been aimed at him. Aizen's eyes flashed with a different disappointment. He had known Wonderweiss could never truly beat Yamamoto, but he had allowed himself a sliver of hope. It had failed. Jin's expression turned sly. Captain Aizen, if even your extinguisher fails, you'll have to face the Captain Commander yourself. Yes. Aizen's gaze sharpened until it was ice. Wonderweiss was tailor-made for Ryujin Jaka. If he can't do it, then I must act. Before they could speak further, the screen abruptly went black and the footage cut to a new scene. The 3 of them, Gin, Tosen Kaname, and Aizen, saw it at the same instant and all 3 voices froze. How is that possible? Yamamoto? When did he lose an arm? The camera showed the Captain Commander's broad back, but one sleeve hung empty where a left arm should have been. The sight struck the onlookers like lightning. Their faces froze in stunned disbelief and horror. This has to be fake, right? After the two brief recaps, Captain Commander Yamamoto had just shown just how terrifyingly strong he was. Whether by Zanpakuto or by Hakuda, it was no exaggeration to call him unbeatable. Even after seeing those scenes, Aizen, still a Shinigami in scope despite his foresight, did not feel confident he could face the Captain Commander directly. In Aizen's mind, there were only two ways to overcome the old man, either by trickery, but the Extinguisher Prince's failure had proven that cunning alone wouldn't work. Against absolute power, plots were laughable. Or by fully fusing with the Hogyoku, using its power to leap beyond the limits of a Shinigami and ascend to a higher plane. Only that could allow someone to surpass Yamamoto in sheer spiritual pressure. Aizen's thoughts leapt to a bold possibility. Could his future self already have fused perfectly with the Hogyoku and defeated Yamamoto? That was the only thing that could plausibly explain why the Captain Commander had lost an arm at the start of the scene, clearly the aftermath of the clash in Karakura town. Captain Aizen. Ichimaru Gin's voice cut through, calm and teasing. He narrowed his eyes and smiled. It seems what you've pined for, weakening the Captain Commander, has finally come true in the future. Yes. Aizen's face remained placid. But even with an arm gone, the old man's presence is still oppressive. He is still the pinnacle of the Shinigami. No one should underestimate him. Those were his honest thoughts. Even a maimed Yamamoto pressed on Aizen's instincts like a weight from the depths of his chest. Then the video shifted. The camera swung behind the Captain Commander and revealed more than a dozen figures in pristine white uniforms standing quietly in the office. Pure-blooded Quincy of the Wandenreich. From the earlier recaps, viewers recognized the Sternritter and the pure-blooded Quincy immediately. Shock rippled through the audience. How dare they come here, into Squad 1's headquarters, right in front of Yamamoto? To challenge the strongest Shinigami of 1,000 years was nothing short of suicide. A voice came from beneath a white mask, deep, cold, formal. Your Excellency, you must be Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, Captain Commander of the Gotei 13. We have come to deliver a message. Watching the scene, everyone realized this was the beginning of the 1,000-year blood war, the opening of that final, devastating conflict. In front of the transparent screen, Chojiro Sasakibe bowed, apologetic and mortified. As 1st Division Lieutenant, he automatically blamed himself for the intrusion. Captain Commander, my apologies. I must have been negligent and allowed the Quincy inside. Chojiro, it's nothing, Yamamoto said, dismissing him with a brief nod. You may have been away on business. Don't take it to heart. His composure was steady, but the next instant shattered the calm. Crash! A deafening sound of splintering wood filled the room. The camera caught an enormous blade of spirit energy slam through the wall and drive deep, impaling the structure. Nailed to the wall by that blade, pale and soaked in blood, a figure dangled, struggling, barely alive. Yamamoto's steady composure broke. He stared, eyes wide as the name tore from him. Chojiro! On the screen, Chojiro's throat had been pierced by the tip of the blade. He hacked blood and coughed, every breath a agony. The sight was unbearable. Chojiro's mind went blank, not because he had failed in duty, but because he realized he was already dying in that vision. Despair washed over him. The realization that he was marked for death collapsed his thoughts into silence. Rage flared in Yamamoto. The old hatred and fury that rarely showed burned bright. He clenched his fist. Even his cane seemed to thrum with power as Ryujin Jaka stirred within it. But the invading Quincy's proclamation only fanned the flames of his anger further. Do not mourn him, the Quincy said coldly. Praise his sacrifice. It heralds a bright future for you Shinigami, the chance to die in futile resistance. Remember, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, in 5 days, you and the entire Gotei 13 will be utterly destroyed by the Wandenreich. The arrogance of it sent every viewer reeling. Yamamoto's face went ashen with fury. He took a step forward, drew his sword in a single terrifying motion, and struck. Ryujin Jaka, Fushigiri! A column of blinding, superheated flames erupted, a curtain of burning light that swallowed the Quincy whole. The camera's feed flared red. The office, much of it built from spirit-killing stone, was incinerated and melted away by that single slash. In an instant, the scene cut. The inferno consumed everything, leaving nothing but white heat and smoke. The footage ended there. The screen erupted in flames. At once, the whole Soul Reaper world was in an uproar. Damn it! A heavily wrinkled hand slammed down. The wooden desk, piled high with squad documents, shattered into splinters. Through the flying chips and smoke, the Captain Commander's face could be seen, purplish with fury, so dark it seemed wet. Having already seen the attack in the footage, his temper flared even higher. "Captain Commander, please contain yourself," Chojiro Sasakibe said quickly, his voice trembling. Even after 1,000 years of service at the man's side, the old retainer felt his heart quake before that boundless rage. Setting aside his own grief at the sight of his future self's death, he forced himself to speak reason. "What we just saw was the original timeline," he insisted. "Now that we have foreknowledge, we have many chances to prevent what happened. Don't fall into the enemy's trap." For once, the old man listened. The Captain Commander drew a breath and raised his eyelids, guilt and self-reproach in his expression. He sighed. "If I hadn't seen it myself, I never would have believed you could die so pathetically under my nose," he admitted. "It's I who should be apologizing." The bloody image of Chojiro impaled before him had struck the Captain Commander's heart. He began to wonder whether this future war was born of his own complacency after centuries of peace. But before he could dwell longer, the footage switched again. Rumbles and the sounds of explosions filled the background. The Seirete lay torn by war. The camera, however, fixed on Yhwach, the Quincy King who had smashed into the Soul King's palace and led his Sternritter to crush Squad Zero during the raid. "Zaraki Kenpachi," Yhwach said with cold approval. "To have slain 3 pure-blooded Quincy of the Sternritter in succession proves I did not misjudge you. You are worthy of the title, one of the 5 special war powers." Under his blood-red cloak, Yhwach gripped Zaraki by the throat and lifted the dying captain into the air with a face set in stone. Then he tossed him aside like refuse. Zaraki hit the ground hard, gravely wounded. His Shinigami robes were tattered and drenched in blood. Before the Quincy King, this beast of a man seemed utterly powerless. Inside the 11th Division, Ikaku Madarame roared in outrage. "What the hell? Am I a background character again? How many times has this happened?" He slashed at the transparent screen, but his golden blade passed through without effect. Only the squad office suffered from the strike. Zaraki, embarrassed and furious, closed his eyes instead. Out of sight, out of mind. "Wait, the Quincy King just called Captain Kenpachi one of the 5 special war powers?" Ikaku frowned, catching a vital detail. He turned to Ayasegawa Yumichika. "Yumichika, who else was a special war power in the archive footage?" Yumichika raised an eyebrow, thinking. "Urahara Kisuke and Kurosaki Ichigo seemed to be one too." Ikaku's confusion deepened. Urahara and Kenpachi made sense, but Ichigo? Could the human boy truly hold such limitless potential in the future to be feared by the Quincy King? If so, would he fully realize it? Otherwise, why would he be one of the 5? Before they could ponder further, the footage showed Kenpachi collapsing. Then a roar like an ancient volcano erupted, and everyone both in the footage and outside it turned toward the source. A fiery red figure streaked toward Yhwach like a burning meteor. "This is..." "The Captain Commander is making his move," someone cried. "The showdown of kings. Is it finally happening?" Through the blinding heat and flame, the Captain Commander's furious face became unmistakable. In the Seirete, a thunderous cheer erupted. After the steadily escalating scenes that led to Chojiro's sudden death, hatred between the sides had reached a fever pitch. For the Captain Commander, it was personal. Blood for blood. He would keep his vow. He would sever Yhwach's head and offer it as a sacrifice for his fallen friend. The Captain Commander landed with a thunderous crash that shook the transparent screen. Residual fire at his feet carved a bottomless crater where he stood, a display of the boundless rage within him. Bathed in heat that raised the air temperature by tens of degrees with each step, he advanced, his willow-like white brows drooping over a murderous gaze that devoured everything. "You resurrect enemies from 1,000 years past," he said, his voice laced with killing intent. "I will eradicate every last one of you. P.S. Thank you all for the flowers, rewards, and evaluation tickets. I hope everyone will continue to support me. I am immensely grateful. Chapter 103, Ryujin Jaka, Bankai? Chapter 119, Section 119. So even Aizen, normally indifferent to everything, couldn't hide his excitement now. His eyes were glued to the screen. Just as the battle seemed about to erupt, Ichimaru Gin spoke up from the side. Captain Aizen, don't you find it odd? After watching those recap scenes, we all instinctively assume the old man will win, right? He looked up, nodding toward the Soul King Palace looming above the dome. But if Yhwach stops here, how would he end up in the Soul King Palace? That doesn't make any sense. Aizen's pupils narrowed. He inhaled sharply, then replied, Gin, are you saying that despite such a grand entrance, Yamamoto Genryusai could still lose this fight? No, I'm not saying that, Captain Aizen. Don't twist my words. Ichimaru shrugged and pretended innocence. If the old man hears me, he'll never forgive me. Then we'll see, Aizen said, his expression hardening. I'm very curious to see which of the two will be my final opponent. Back to the footage. The Captain Commander's spiritual pressure descended like an explosion from the sky. In the camera's view, every inch of land within sight was scorched. Outside the 1st Division barracks, buildings had been reduced to ruins in an instant. It seemed as if only the flames of Ryujin Jaka remained in the whole world. In the center of that fire, Yamamoto and Yhwach stared at each other across the inferno, their gazes locked, while their spiritual pressures clashed violently through the air. Whether it was the sound of air shattering or the roar of spiritual pressure colliding, the noise was deafening. On the left of the screen, Yhwach let his blood-red cloak billow in the heat. He met the Captain Commander's burning gaze, and the sword wrapped in flame with a slow half-smile. Yamamoto Genryusai, he said, we meet again after a millennium. You probably didn't expect the Seirete to be in such ruins, did you? Yhwach's eyes flickered, as if waiting to see how the old man would react. Yamamoto remained silent, his ancient eyes, witnesses to 2,000 years, filled with monstrous, concentrated rage. He raised his Zanpakuto and pointed the scorching blade at Yhwach's heart, enunciating the hated name like a curse. Yhwach, blood for blood, the pain Chojiro suffered, I will engrave it back into your flesh, into your bones, into every nerve. A colossal pillar of fiery spiritual pressure shot up from the old man and burst from his body like a volcanic eruption. The roar shook the ground beneath his feet and reverberated across the Seirete. Monstrous killing intent poured from him. It felt as though the entire Soul Society would be buried in that blaze. It's terrifying. Compared to this, those previous scenes were child's play. An enraged Captain Commander could truly destroy the whole Soul Society by himself. Even those who had seen his power before were stunned anew. A single wisp of that heat from the footage was enough to splinter the wooden floors in the inner court. The broken wood ignited instantly. Fires broke out all over the Seirete and spread like wildfire, racing toward the Seirete wall until they were stopped by the spirit-sealing stones. While the Shinigami scrambled to douse the flames, something unexpected happened on the battlefield where king faced king. Other spiritual pressures slammed into the scene. 3 Quincy of pure blood, Sternritter in white uniforms, leaped from the shadows in midair, shouting as they charged the Captain Commander. Die, you old man who's barely holding on. You've lived too long. It's time to end your life. Die, Captain Commander of the Shinigami. Sharp, frantic killing intent descended from the sky. The 3 swung their weapons in unison, aiming to strike Yamamoto. Then, a bunch of fools. The Captain Commander's single, contemptuous sentence preceded an eruption from Ryujin Jaka. The blade flared like an ancient volcano. A mushroom cloud of blinding flame and spiritual pressure rose with a thunderous boom. By the time the Quincy reacted, the rising inferno had already swallowed them. There were 3 heavy thuds as charred bodies crashed among the ash-filled ruins. Death came too fast for them to cry out. Even after cutting down 3 captain-level combatants with a single swing, Yamamoto's expression remained indifferent. His eyes kept burning with killing intent. Only for Yhwach, the sinner he hated so deeply he wanted to tear him apart with his own hands. Yamamoto Genryusai, Yhwach said, nodding. Time may have taken your youth and your looks, but it hasn't touched your power. It's good you know that, Yamamoto replied. Holding his sword in one hand and stepping on crimson flames, he slowly walked toward Yhwach. Now follow your damned subordinates and be buried beneath Ryujin Jaka's blade. Rage thundered to the heavens. The captain commander's body, wrapped in searing flame, surged toward Yhwach. A sudden, brutal strike melted the Quincy King's bangs. Yhwach did not lose his composure. He instinctively raised an arm and blocked the red blade with Blutvini. Even so, the blood-colored cloak was torn open where the sword had cut through. Section 120. The bleeding from the wound below stopped the instant the fierce heat seared it shut. But the subsequent torrent of flames forced Yhwach to draw his personal sword in defense. Clang! The blow drove his blade backward. Yhwach's feet dragged, gouging 2 black furrows in the ground. Only by thrusting the sword into the earth could he barely steady himself. From ahead came the captain commander's deeper, more terrible roar. "You finally drew your sword, Yhwach," the old man said. "Did you think I wouldn't be waiting for this moment from the moment the battle began?" Yhwach frowned, a cold dread rising from his core. "Yes?" Crimson flames and the blade rose slowly to Yamamoto's side as he lifted his arm. At the same time, the old man's spiritual pressure, the extreme presence of a Shinigami at his peak, compressed to a crushing intensity. "Next," he intoned, "I will shatter your sword, your flesh, and your soul, and grind them all to dust." Back in the 13th Division, alarms and shouts rang as people crowded around the viewing screen. Kyoraku Shunsui stared at the image, frowning as the blaze on the display suddenly diminished. It was too strange. If Yamamoto intended to eradicate Yhwach's body, he should be unleashing Ryujin Jaka's overwhelming inferno, unless Shunsui's eyes widened. He breathed the thought out in a trembling whisper, barely audible. Could it be? Captain Yamamoto, he's going to use Bankai? Ryujin Jaka's Bankai. Even as a direct disciple, he had never seen it. Legends told of 1,000 years ago, during the genocidal war with the Quincy, when a terrible fire beast appeared on a field strewn with corpses, slaughtering friend and foe alike. Paintings of that monster still hung in the Spiritual Arts Academy and the Seireite's archives. Shunsui had long suspected the flame monster was Yamamoto fully unleashed. 1,000 years ago, the old man had been merciless. To obliterate his enemies, he would spare nothing, not even his own men, not even half of Soul Society itself. Who would have thought it would reawaken now? "Look," someone cried. "The fires are contracting faster. The image is getting clearer. He really is about to use Bankai." Jushiro Ukitake's face drained of color. The falling flames were not a sign of victory. They were the calm before a storm. If Ryujin Jaka's Bankai released, it would not only threaten Yhwach, it would threaten the future of the Seireite and everyone watching the broadcast. Ukitake's worry tightened like a fist in his chest, but as a viewer there was nothing he could do. He could only watch as the last wisp of flame died away. On the screen, light broke through the smoke. The captain commander stood bathed in it, casting a long shadow over embers and ash. His Zanpakuto, Ryujin Jaka, no longer gleamed with the cold flash of a blade. It had been turned charred black, like iron filings fused by fire. "Humph." Yamamoto lowered his head and frowned at the blackened katana. Yhwach's expression froze along with the dying flames. He's going to use Bankai? A surge of dread made Yhwach take an instinctive step backward. His retreat showed, without a doubt, that he had flinched. "You haven't forgotten the pain of 1,000 years ago, have you?" The captain commander said as he held the pitch-black blade and stepped forward. There were no longer flames coiling around his arm, but his aura had become even more terrifying. If before he had felt like an erupting volcanic giant, now he felt like a 100-level quake deep in the Earth's core, poised to tear the crust apart and trigger a cataclysm. The sheer force that could destroy all of Soul Society resonated through time and space as Yamamoto intoned the release. "Bankai, Zanka no Tachi, Blade of Ember." Several meters from the viewing screen, Ichimaru Gin had retreated to the edge of the wall, unwilling to draw any closer. Even his fox-like smile froze when Zanka no Tachi appeared. Ryujin Jaka's Shikai had been an overwhelming, sky-covering inferno. The Bankai, reduced to a charred little blade, gave a deceptively smaller first impression. But after suffering losses before, most of the viewers, like Jin, no longer dared to gamble. They instinctively put as much distance between themselves and the screen as possible, wary of being affected again. "No," Aizen said quietly, perception slicing through the spectacle. "The flames haven't vanished. They've been sealed inside that charred blade." Sealing all the flames into one compressed point meant concentrating all destructive power into the edge. That, Aizen knew, was the true horror. Sealing the flames themselves? Ichimaru murmured, puzzled. Hadn't a similar trick been used before? He watched as Yamamoto in the video provided the answer with action. "Yhwach," the old man said, looking up slightly, the black Zanpakuto at his side. "You must never forget this katana, will you?" He lifted Zanka no Tachi and took a step. Boom.